All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming over here. This is the second part of the October United Way Speak Up series, Wake Up series. I'm sorry, Wake Up Speaker series. So we're cleverly calling this one Wake Up and Wind Down. So this is an opportunity to just have a casual conversation. And so the way that we really want to see this happening, so for folks that have been part of the Wake Up series in the past, we'll usually have through Zoom, we'll do it kind of a webinar style, and then people kind of ask questions through the Q&A. This is a little bit different. This one we wanted to keep as kind of a smaller group, casual type of conversation with people who are involved in the election process. And we have this recorded so that we'll have it, viewable through Facebook. But people who want to kind of come in and ask questions, we want to invite you to come in and do this. So come in as you will, and we'll open this so that people can pose questions for us. We have with us Mary Ann Williams from the League of Women Voters, Nicole County Clerk Nicole Browne, as well as Kylie Lewis, who is a voter organizer at Indiana University. I am Mark Fraley, the Associate Director of the PACE program, and PACE is a proud co-sponsor of the United Way Speaker Series, the Wake Up Speaker Series. And sponsors. Efrat, is there anyone you want to thank there?
My dogs are barking, so forgive me. I'll type it in.
So we also want to be able to thank Efrat's dogs for this. Efrat is the executive director of the Monroe County United Way, and so we're grateful to do this here this evening. And so I just want to start and give each of our panelists a chance to be able to introduce themselves and what they're working on this election season. Mary Ann, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. It's so great to be here. I'm Mary Ann Williams, and I am the Voter Service Committee co-chair for the League of Women Voters of Bloomington, Monroe County. I work along with Ralph Shaw, and together our job is to create and provide timely and accurate information on elections and voting and other issues. As you know, League of Women Voters and women's suffrage has been celebrating that big 100th anniversary this year. And we've been a part of that for sure as much as possible. Many things have had to be canceled. But the local league here in Bloomington is actually maybe a little older than that. So Bloomington has a long, good history of that work. I've lived in Bloomington since 2001. I am a gardener, and I love dogs too. There is a group of dogs, the herding dogs, who actually are known for their ability to kind of circle around a group and kind of help the group to establish its direction and go where they want and need to go, being moderately dominant and friendly. Thank you for letting me be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. Kai.
Hi everyone, my name is Kylie Lewis and I'm a junior at Indiana University. I study math, geography, and I'm also pursuing the PACE certificate, and I have political science and Spanish minors. This semester, I've been working a lot with the Big Ten Voting Challenge through the PACE office as an engagement intern. So a lot of what we and I have been trying to do is share information with IU students about deadlines, about voter registration, absentee ballot requesting, mailing absentee ballot, and early voting specific to Monroe County. And we have placed voter registration signs and now get out the vote signs all throughout IU's campus, and have connected with student groups and departments all across IU about motivating students to get out and vote. And then for the next month or so, we're figuring out ways to help students get to the polls, especially if they live on campus and don't have access to a car and stuff like that. So I'm excited. Thank you for having me here today.
All right, thank you so much, Kai. And Clerk Brown.
Hello, good evening. I'm Nicole Browne. And first, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for every single thing, big and small, that you're doing to champion these elections. And so I currently serve and have served since 2016 as the clerk of the Monroe County Courts. Most of the time, that's a pretty low-key job where my office is your access to the Monroe County Circuit Courts. But around this time of year, my profile is a little more visible because I am the person who oversees every election that is held in Monroe County. And that means that at 6:01, when those polls close, my team and I will get to work to getting those ballots counted and working on getting you the results. And so it's obviously been an interesting year. I never expected in my lifetime to oversee any election, but let alone an election in the middle of a pandemic. And so I'm excited to be a part of this, excited to help get the word out so that we can get you voted in. A special thank you to you, Ms. Kai, because we need students out there. That tends to be my lowest demographic that votes on during the elections. It's a bit more for presidential, and I'm excited for it to be more this year. Thank you, Ms. Kai.
Thank you, Nicole. And so one of the things I just want to say is, like, for folks who are used to most of our waking up series, we tend to do it a little bit more formal, but this is one of those times, like, I don't need to hog all the questions, and do have some prepared, but we know that we've got some other stalwarts in our community who are here. And so, if you have a question that you'd like to ask about the election process, get anything else, unmute your mic and, signal to us, and we'll call on you. We want to keep this casual because it's the end of the day. It's a Thursday. A lot of us have been working really hard, so we want to get some good information, but you just have a good conversation as well. So thanks everyone for doing it. I do want to start off with a question, though, and I think that this is going to be something that a lot of us are curious, especially since we have Clerk Browne here with us right now. The first week of early voting, I know, has been pretty intense, right? I know Kai helped organize a group of students outside of the election central on the first day, encouraging people to get out there and vote before casting their first votes. And we were out there, we saw tons of lines, and those lines did not die down. So Nicole, what's the first week of voting looking like so far?
Well, excellent question. I'm very excited that on our first day of early voting, we saw 899 people standing out in line around Election Central, and it was fabulous to see them. I also then was popping back in and checking with other Indiana clerks, and everybody experienced lines and people excited to be out. This typically does not happen during the first week of early voting. It tends to be toward the end, but we had 899 people the first day, and then 857 people yesterday. And if we end up going a little past 6, I've asked them to send me that number so I can break a little news to you for today.
Excellent. Wow, so great to hear all that. And one of the things that we're seeing, both Kai and Marianne, you represent organizations that either on campus or in the community have these vote early signs that are going around. So you're trying to really encourage this early voting behavior. So why don't you give us a little bit of an example? You're talking to a citizen out there. Why should they cast their vote early? Why not wait until election day to cast their ballot?
Well, I'd be happy to speak on that, Mark. Yes, those signs are a project that we have by hand placed, about 150 of them, I believe. Why vote early? Well, this is a high interest presidential election, and we're in the midst of the COVID, and we need to observe social distancing. So with those 3 factors in mind, one can expect delays, one can expect lines. And so what we want to do as the courteous citizens is to go ahead and vote early to help the whole system, to create flow and throughput and to avoid bottlenecks. It's better for the whole system if we get in there early, gives the people inside the building. These are the people I'm thinking about a lot, the people inside the building, you know, the opportunity to process our votes in a somewhat systematic manner without feeling overly crunched. I mean, they're going to be crunched, but
So in the sense you're saying it's like flattening the voter curve, right? You know, we've kind of
yeah,
gone through all of this with COVID, trying to, you know, that this is also a thing about casting your votes, not to put too much strain on the system at one particular time. Is that a fair analogy?
Too
that's a
soon,
great
Mark,
analogy.
too soon.
It wasn't a joke. I was actually trying to
It's a great analogy.
edit that out in post.
And
Yeah.
so I'll be interested as we go along. I think you had mentioned Kai would also be responding to that question, but I'm interested in hearing Nicole say one more time, Miss Nicole, one more time, about what happens at 6:01. What is going to be the experience of those people who are counting the votes?
Oh my goodness. Well, at 6:01, as you might imagine, we go to work. I mean, it's not as though we haven't had a lot going on all day. We're answering your calls, making sure that people know where the polling sites are. And so it's been pretty busy all day, but it's a different kind of busy at 6:01 because we have a couple things going simultaneously. So on the one hand, we've got an assembly line of people ready to receive the inspectors from each of our 28 polling sites, and they will drop everything off, including that thumb drive that we need for everybody who voted at that particular polling site that day. And then behind the scenes, we are back at computers and taking those thumb drives and inserting them and dispersing the votes. And those begin to populate a list that I try to get out as often as I can to the media and candidates and other interested parties to let you know what our absentee votes have looked like. And as the polling sites come in and that number increases until we get a total count that I send at the end of the night, if possible. I wouldn't look for that this year. That tells you of all the people who cast a ballot in Monroe County for that presidential election, you know, this is how the votes turned out until we have 100% of the people who voted in the election.
That's excellent, and this is the thing. It's like I know that the lines here at IU tend to be pretty long as well, Kai. So what about for students? You know, what might be the advantage to students for voting early, given what we might expect on election day?
Yeah, first I just want to say that I completely second all of what Marianne said at the start about how, like, from a systemic perspective too, it's important, but from someone who voted in like the midterms in 2018, I voted on the last day of early voting that you could, that was Friday. And on that next Tuesday, so many of my friends were texting me that they were at the IMU, and like IU doesn't cancel classes on election days because it's not a national holiday or anything of that sort. But so if you have a 2-hour break in between your first and second class of the day, even if it's on Zoom, you can't guarantee that you'll be in and out within 2 hours, especially with this year and all of the extra cleaning that goes on in between people going to the polling station to vote. So I think, I mean, I'm going to vote tomorrow and I don't have any Friday classes, so I know I can dedicate as much time as I need to wait in those lines and vote. That's why I think voting early for students, and that I've been trying to encourage all of my friends and all of the people I work with on like my RA staff and everyone that I see to go vote early, because like you just don't know how long it's going to take, especially with, you know, cleaning and people. Like this year I feel like people are voting more than they maybe did in the 2018 midterms. And you just don't know how long you're going to have to spend there. And if you have to leave to go to class or go to meeting or go into work, you know, on that Tuesday, I think it's better to go whenever you have the entire month of October to, you know, pick a day to go and dedicate, you know, 3 or 4 hours to wait in line. So I think from a student's perspective, just from like time management wise, it makes so much more sense to go and vote early and relieve so much stress.
Yeah, no, I certainly hear that. Efrat?
I was curious about absentee ballots this this cycle, and Clerk Browne, if there's anything you could share with us about the volume you had, or the even the process of how those get counted and when.
That is an excellent question. And so first, let me say what we don't have. I know that it's been a huge disappointment to many voters that we do not have the no excuse absentee by voting mail ballot for the general election. That was courtesy and a privilege extended to us by Governor Holcomb and Secretary of State Lawson. It was not extended for this time, so you do have to have a reason to request a mailed ballot. So far, I got these numbers just special for you. We have had, through yesterday, 12,688 requests for mail ballots, and now not all of them have been returned to us. And I know a lot of people probably got that postcard from the post office encouraging you to get it back to us with 7 days to spare. In any forum I've been in, I'm hoping that people will get it in closer to the 2 weeks so that the mail has plenty of time to get to me. That is a long process. That's why I can't guarantee you will have results on election night, because it takes 17 steps to get a ballot mailed out to the voter, bipartisan teams along the way, and 17 steps to check that mailed ballot back in. That's why when you see some of the misinformation about we're mailing ballots out to puppies and things like that, that does not happen. Rover cannot get a ballot in Monroe County. We're comparing signatures, we're making sure your registration is active, and that you are who you say you are when you vote. So it's quite a process. That's what is taking longer to get those final results out to you. And so right now we're waiting, we're hoping that we can get special dispensation to start working on those a little sooner than we otherwise would have. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's interesting. And 12,000 sounds like a lot.
And that's just through today. You have until October 22nd to request it.
Wow.
Wow. So, that's a really good question. I think, it's this might be something for either, Kai or Marianne, you might want to come in here. I think especially this is, a lot of students might choose to vote absentee, right? They might choose to vote absentee because they're either registered at their home location, but you also have students whose living situations might be a little bit uncertain at this time. You have people who are being asked to leave their I think is a polite way, who are having to uproot themselves from their living quarters. So what should they be thinking about? Because I can imagine a lot of students, if somebody in their unit, comes down with an illness and they have to be quarantined for a while, I imagine maybe not always voting is the first thing on their minds. So what should the students be thinking about, and what are the ways that we can probably help them to make sure that they're thinking about everything that they need to be thinking about, which includes voting?
I think part of that question goes back to preparing early. So you have until October 22nd to request your absentee ballot, but like Clerk Browne was saying, that it's best to get it in by that Tuesday, October 20th date to have that 2-week window. And if you're sent home or contact traced and sent to Ashton, if you live in a residence hall or something of the sort, your first priority probably isn't, like you were saying, is to make sure you have the secrecy envelope and do every single step right of the absentee ballot, because you're frazzled. One, you might have COVID-19, or you might be scared to be isolated alone in Ashton for 2 weeks, or bring it home to your family. There's a lot of things going on. And also balancing your schoolwork if you have in-person classes that you can no longer make it to. So, I mean, being uprooted in that scenario causes a lot of things to become unbalanced, even though this year IU has been more flexible than ever with online classes and accommodations of the sort. It's still super stressful, and voting is something that you can get a grade for, something like you have to complete to get credit or something of the sort, like, you know, classes and stuff are. So I think that is easily pushed to the back burner, which is why I, you know, like, I'm telling all of my friends and everyone I can just to vote early. Like, you know, the term get it over with isn't really correct for the situation because it's not something that it's really a chore or a burden in this case. But I mean, getting it over with is going to help you in the future. That way, if you do get sent home next week, at least your vote was put in the mailbox, you know, today, or you went to go early vote today. And especially if you do get contact traced or test positive for COVID, you probably like, you shouldn't be going to vote early at the polls, regardless of like how safe, you know, and far apart from everyone. Like, you shouldn't be there. So, and that's 2 weeks of time that you have to wait before you can go again. So I think this might be a simplistic answer, but I'm like encouraging everyone to just do it as soon as they get the chance. And I know it's easy to forget or get confused on that indiana.voters.in.org website, you know, how to get your mail-in ballot, how to do all of this stuff. But you know, we have really good resources here at IU, like the IU Libraries has drop-in virtual voting literacy hours, which I've been, you know, telling to my friends that have issues, or like, I mean, I'm always willing to help anyone, so, or with what I can. I don't know much about outside of Indiana, but I'll help them figure it out. But just getting it done as soon as possible, I think, is the best way to combat the stress with COVID and like not having, if you're going to be able to come back to, like, I live in a dorm, so if I test positive or get contact traced, I'm out of here, which I mean, as it should be, but like that stress is something that you have to prepare to deal with before it happens.
Wow. Mary Ann, do you have anything to add to that, or?
That was totally complete. Thank you, Kai. I think you brought up an issue that I hadn't envisioned, which is what happens. People are already here. Maybe they've adjusted their registration for here and they're upended in the middle of this. I wouldn't be able to speak to that. Maybe Nicole would speak, but I am, of course, aware of this 30 days. We have to live in a precinct for 30 days in order to be eligible to vote.
Yeah, so that is an interesting question, Nicole. So if someone, you know, late in October comes down with COVID, right? What are their options for voting? And they haven't requested an absentee ballot at that point. What are their options?
That's an excellent question, Mark. And one of the things that all 92 Indiana clerks have asked of the Indiana Election Commission is to allow, we have travel board, but of course we don't want to send our poll workers out to meet with someone who has COVID. We don't want to expose them to that. So what we've asked for is, say you're in a assisted living facility and you have COVID, then we've asked that the staff who work there serve as the travel board, and like we can watch through the window so that we can witness, you know, that it was the voter, and then pass that to us, put it in an envelope, and they'll bring it back to us. But we've not received confirmation that that is something that we can do yet. We've made a list of 10 requests that would help us get through this election in this unusual time, and that is one of them. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks. And I imagine just that, you know, the people here and the people who are going to be watching this on Facebook, you know, that I imagine you might have a lot of support to be able to make voting options available, because you know, I think that there's a lot of people who want to be both healthy and have their rights, and
Absolutely.
have fun. They could certainly
Absolutely.
want to be together. So I think that there'd be a lot of people, if you need support behind you, I think that there might be able to find.
Well, by all means, reach out to your state senator, your state representative. The clerks made sure to make their requests nonpartisan. Mm-hmm. We're aware that party chairs at the state level may have additional ask, but we really kept ours, things that it didn't matter if you were a Republican clerk or a Democratic clerk. It would help you to process the election as quickly, safely, you know, and efficiently as possible. Thank you.
So I think that that's also kind of a good question. When we think about this election in the context of the pandemic that we're in, how secure can voters feel that they're going to be able to go and cast their vote? You know, say they're a healthy voter, no symptoms, no reason to believe that they've got COVID. should they feel comfortable going either to Election Central or going to the polls and say that they can be able to vote without any fear of contracting anything?
Absolutely. And so the first thing is that we've limited the number of people who are in Election Central, and we limit the number of voters who can come in at one time. So when I first became clerk, we had Franklin booths. I don't know if you guys remember the big booths with the curtains. We had those all over the middle of Election Central. And so I could get, 10, 15, 20 voters in and get them out in 10 minutes. And, you didn't have to worry about sharing a pen with someone else. Now we've got about 10 tables, and we only let 2 people at each table, and they're on either end so that they can be socially distanced. Indiana clerks were incredibly fortunate. The Secretary of State had the National Guard deliver us more than enough PPE. So there is plenty of hand sanitizer, plenty of cloths to wipe things down, plenty of alcohol. There's a solution that works on your voting machine, 70% alcohol, 30% water, and you use a lint-free cloth to wipe that down in between voters. We're cleaning at a minimum of once per hour, but I know I've got some obsessive people who are trying to clean in between each and every voter before they step up, and the governor's mask mandate is still in effect. If you do not have a mask, we will certainly make one available to you. And so, yes, I feel very confident that Monroe County voters can be assured that they will have a safe and positive experience. And I'll also just point out that the governor indicated there is no known case of COVID in the state of Indiana that was traced back to the primary voting experience. Thank you.
That's good to know.
I would like to underscore that also, Mark, and to just note that out on the Monroe County voters website, they have displayed an impressive list of all the things that they're doing, such as Ms. Nicole has just told us about. But I think that is an impressive list which shows a lot of consideration, including ventilation factors, keeping the doors open and ventilating. Quite wonderful.
So this is one of the things that's come up in this election as part of the overall national conversation. And it comes up every election, but I think even more so this year. We've heard a lot of reports about funny things happen with the Postal Service. We hear a lot of reports about mail-in ballots counted. What can each of us do? So, in your perspective, is voter suppression a legitimate concern? How does it manifest itself, and what can we do to defend against it?
Well, to start off, I would say that voter suppression is any item or activity or obstacle to voting, to fair and safe voting. This can happen in so many different ways. Intimidation at the polls, just anything that makes it harder to vote. I mean, it might be interesting, Mark, to ask the audience if each of them would like to submit an idea of what is voter suppression. We would get an array of answers to this.
Yeah, Kyle, what are your thoughts? You're in a student population, right? And so is this a concern among students?
Yeah, I think a lot of the existing structures of voting in elections do disenfranchise certain populations, differently abled people, Black voters, and students being one of those populations, because whenever, especially if you go to college out of state, you don't have a valid, if you go to college here from somewhere else, you don't have a valid Indiana driver's license, and only some of the time does your school ID count as a valid ID to vote. And like with the confusion with absentee ballots and not the hesitation of not wanting to overwhelm the USPS in voting, and then the concern of your mail-in ballot being counted, as there is that prevailing narrative over, voter fraud and mail-in ballots, regardless of, the facts behind that statement, like that narrative does instill fear in people. It makes them nervous to want to vote that way. So I registered to vote here my freshman year, like in Monroe County from Marion. And I mean, I know for a fact that if I were voting absentee, like at my hometown in Marion County, I would be much more stressed than I am to vote absentee in person, like early voting in Monroe, just because I know that I have complete control over, you know, how whenever I go vote, like seeing the ballot go, I don't know. And I know a lot of my friends that are voting absentee feel a little nervous, like they put it in their mailbox and they, you know, don't see it. And you can check with the county clerks to make sure it gets there and counted and all of that. But it's really stressful. And I think voter suppression is anything that as an additional obstacle that seems to target certain groups. And this year, more than ever, we're seeing that, like the June 9th primary in Georgia, where there was those absurdly long lines at the polls and stacks of ballots went missing. That clearly was an issue of voter suppression that, you know, like it wasn't concerning students, it was concerning Black voters specifically. But it's disheartening to know that, you know, these structures exist and that we have to figure out ways to, you know, fight voter suppression, because voting is one of the most fundamental ways keeping a democracy alive. But I think one of the most effective ways to do that is to be aware that they exist and know, like, to the extent that structures or existing systemic issues can prevent someone. It's not just, you know, one person showing up to, you know, block a poll or, you know, poll watching or anything like that. Like, these are actual things written into law, written into code that can disenfranchise groups. And I think knowing what you can about it and making a plan to do what you can to get things done, I'm going to say it again, but get things done early, and educate yourself as much as you can to do so, I think is one of the ways. And then of course there are so many great groups all throughout, I know Indiana, but all throughout the country that are dedicated to fighting voter fraud and voting suppression. So connecting with those, I think, are really powerful as well.
Yeah.
What should a voter do if they feel like something is infringing on their rights, or you know, they're having a problem accessing the polls either earlier on that day? Who should they reach out to?
Well, I would say,
Go ahead, sweetheart.
I was going to say call Election Central. Voters, you know, there have been various attempts to list voter rights. And if a voter has a question about the process, they should reach out for answers from an authority. It is okay to question the process. Nicole, did you want to add any further to that?
Well, I'd call Election Central too, Miss Mary Ann. The Monroe County Election Board comes together beginning the night before Election Day. We make sure that we have received calls from every inspector at every polling site, that they have received the equipment at that polling site. It's set up and ready to go at 6 o'clock on Election Day. And I tend to stay back at Election Central, but I have bipartisan members of the Monroe County Election Board, a Republican representative and a Democratic representative. And so if we are made aware of issues, you're absolutely right. Please call in, because a bipartisan team will come out to the site. I've had complaints. I can't do anything about construction at a polling site on Election Day, but I've had calls in like that because people thought that that was impeding people's access to the polls. So we go out and just make sure there is not an issue, or if there is an issue, working to rectify that and making it safe for everybody to come to the door.
Yeah, so I think, Mark, you have the in the moment sense of suppression. Mm-hmm. The details leading up to it, you know, the ease of being able to read the forms, the ease of being able to read the instructions, the timing, the scheduling, the calendar. There's another one, that is the way in which the districts are drawn, which leads to this concept of gerrymandering. And I mention this because we have our census going on right now. And when the census is complete, our electoral districts will be redrawn. And there will be a big effort by League of Women Voters, Common Cause, and other organizations to be active in that redrawing of the districts. So after the election is finished, this is what you're going to you will see coming from Common Cause and League of Women Voters. There is a program pretty well outlined where there will be a citizen group, a citizen commission to kind of shadow and be aware of and kind of watching the legislature as it redraws the lines. There will be a software package where citizens can work together to provide ideas for a fair redistricting.
Mm-hmm.
This gerrymandering is as old as the country, and it has been practiced on both sides of the aisle. And so what we need, I think, in terms of electoral reform is a good, clear, transparent process every 10 years that is bipartisan in nature. But we will start after the election. You will begin to hear about this. We'll be calling on people for their input.
So I think that's a really good point, because we have to think about what is it that we're going to do right now in order to be able to make sure that people have got the ability to vote, they've got access to the polls, and they've got their rights respected to vote. But there's also what we need to be able to do over the long term to be able to have the types of systems in place and policies that are going to do that. And I think that the 2020 election is important for a couple of reasons. One is that, yeah, we've got the census going on right now. And also, we're also electing the representatives on the state level who are going to have some authority over the redistricting process, right? I also have, I see, Kara has actually put up some interesting questions, because as a candidate has been outside there a long time, so you're here, and feel free to chime in if you want. So you're seeing that there's some people that are being deterred by long lines. Is this something that we tend to see as a problem? And do you have anything else that you'd like to add to that, Kara?
No, I just noticed that, but I think people are just like going to come back later. I think it's good that we're having so many days of early voting. Mm-hmm. But we were out there the first day of early voting, and the lines are pretty incredible. And every time I drove by today, it seemed like it was pretty robust as well. So that's good. And I don't know. We voted the first day. We went at 5:30, and even though the line was around the corner, it only took about 45 minutes. So yeah. I think the lines are just longer because people are spacing out, but then people tend to get freaked out when they see the line. So hopefully we can get the word out that it doesn't take that long.
Fair enough. Maybe it's like I remember when I was a kid and I was trying to ride the Vortex at Kings Island. There's like a 40-minute wait from this point forward, and that's what I would look at to say, like, do I want to ride this or do I want to ride this other roller coaster, right? And so I think roller coasters are kind of metaphors for elections. I think anyone who's a candidate or has been a candidate can get that sense. I also see, Sherry has a question about absentee ballots. So if that an absentee ballot is requested or received and the person decides to vote in person, does the unopened ballot need to be brought back to the polling place by the voter on the day of voting?
So that is an excellent question, Ms. Sherry. And actually, Indiana Clerk, several people tried to do that the first day, and it must have happened all across the state because all of a sudden the Indiana Election Division sent out a notice to all of the clerks that if you have requested it by mail, you cannot turn it in during early voting. You can turn it in on election day and say, I never voted it, I want to turn it in and vote in person, but you can't do that now. So the couple of instances, I've been going out and saying hi to people, thanking them for staying in line. And when I see that, I've kind of encouraged them, because you can drop off a voted ballot. People are doing that a lot in lieu of going through the postal system. So I've encouraged them to go back to their car, fill it out privately, whatever they want to do, vote however they want to vote, put it in the envelope, and then walk it in, because there's a separate entrance if you want to drop that ballot off in person, so that it's not the same as standing in line for 45 minutes if that's meaningful to you, but you don't have to have a wasted trip to Election Central. And so, like I said, we just found out about that. I can see how people would want to change their mind, but you can only do that on Election Day, November 3rd. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Now that's a good question. So, so this is really interesting because it seems like there's all these lines. There's a lot of energy, a lot of excitement about voting. So, how well do we? And I think this is a question for all of y'all. Like, how well do we normally do in terms of voting in Indiana? I'd love to be able to hear this from the perspective from students as well as statewide. And I think Marianne, you might also have some information to share as well. You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Yes, I'd love
There you
to.
go.
I'd love to do this. Let me just pull this one slide up here. Voting, Indiana's voting participation. Yes, over a long period of time and related to the census in a way. Went out to fairvote.org and got this data. And here we see the 50 states represented by the big blue bars. And we see Indiana and its ranking here in the orange, ranked against the other 50 states in terms of our voter participation in the 2012, 2014, 2016, and 2018 elections. We all know that Indiana is fairly low in terms of voter participation, but this, I think this graphic really brings it to life. And so we have a ways to go. It's a bit anemic. And I am interested to see that it was, 2012, in 2010, which is not shown on this graphic, but in 2010, that was the census. And then we reorganized the districts, and now we have following these examples of a relatively low voter participation. So it would seem that with high levels of gerrymandering, the high levels of gerrymandering are correlated with lower voter participation. Just thought I would share that with the group.
Yeah, well, that's I'm glad that you did, because usually 38th in the nation is not a big inspirational chant that we like to go by. So so it seems like there is some correlation between people feeling that their vote matter, like it's that they're voting in a competitive election, right? Whether they're in a swing state or not, or whether they've got a competitive district or not, and how well they're voting. We saw an improvement from 2014 to 2018. In 2014, the top of the ticket was Secretary of State. In 2018, there was a high-profile Senate race and congressional race, right? And so it seemed like in those times people had something to vote for. 2008, the state of Indiana was competitive on the presidential level. The other elections, not so much. So I'd be curious, and I think both Kai and Marianne, you might have different answers to this, or maybe the same. I'd be curious what you think. If someone says like, well, you know what? Why should I bother? Why should I take my time to go to the polls if we already know who's going to win in that state, and I don't have a competitive congressional election to vote in? Why should I get out there?
One thing that, because my friend group is, I think I have a biased perspective. They're all, going to vote, very politically active. But some people that I work with came to me and said this exact same thing. And, Indiana comparatively is one of the more gerrymandered states. Gerrymandering happens, like Marianne said, everywhere on both sides of the aisle, but in Indiana particularly, it is noticeably gerrymandered, I would say. And I mean, it definitely goes beyond Indiana, but like the electoral college and the winner takes all system. Whereas like if one precinct and majority goes towards one party, all of the other votes also go towards that party in the electoral, like when the electors go to vote. It can be really disheartening, but I mean, in 2018 particularly, I think we saw the power of the student voter turnout and youth voting, because 2018 saw the largest amount of youth participation in a midterm, like in the past, I think like 40 or 50 years. And we almost like, not we, youth voters in Texas got so close to turning a red state blue with their Senate race, I believe, with Beto O'Rourke. And that was just due to youth voter turnout. So if people get beyond that narrative of, oh, it's not going to matter, and why should I go vote? It does matter. In 2016, the difference came down to almost on average a 5 vote per precinct made the difference. So these votes do matter, and the numbers might be disheartening, but it doesn't take that much time to go vote and to make the difference. It's not like it's a week-long process where you don't feel like it's going to make a change. It's a 45-minute to an hour-long thing where you go and you check some boxes on a paper. So I think that's one, like there was one person who I was having a really tough discussion with about the same topic, and they kept saying, well, it doesn't matter, I care about the issues, but I don't think my vote's going to change anything. And I was like, well, if you care about it, then go vote. Like it doesn't harm you to go vote, even if you feel as if it doesn't matter. There's still empowerment in taking the time to go and like express your voice, participate in a civic democracy. And so even if the vote doesn't go the way you want, or the election goes a different way than what you were hoping, you still tried, you still made an effort and, shared your opinion and expressed your voice to, hopefully sway it in the way that you wanted. And there's power in that in and of itself, even if the election goes the wrong way. And all of these structures like gerrymandering, electoral college, and voter ID laws in Indiana as well exist to, make it harder to go vote. Going against that itself is even more powerful. So I think trying to make people excited about the act of voting in and of itself, even if it's not you're voting for, of course, I'm voting because I care about the issues, but also I just think it's so cool to be able to vote. Whenever I got to vote in 2018, I was so excited. It was the first time I was ever able to vote, and I was so pumped to go and do it. And I think, being able to show that like you can be a little geeky about it and that it's so cool and so exciting makes younger people more excited. And especially I think this election in particular, with all that has happened in, just since 2020, but, all over the past 4 years, has made young people in particular more excited and more energized than ever to go vote. Like we saw, in the protests this summer, they were like spearheaded by people in Gen Z and, millennials. So I think they're starting to see their political organizing capabilities, and that hopefully, I'm hoping, will be reflected in this election, because I think youth voter turnout, like Clerk Browne was saying, is one of the lower demographics in Monroe County, even though Indiana University is here. So, which is disheartening to hear. So I'm hoping that changes.
Yeah, it's really funny because someone asked me that question. I was speaking to a class the other day, and someone, asked me that question too. And I think there's one thing to say your vote matters, and then there's also another thing to be able to say I matter. And casting a vote is, in a sense, when people cut all these figures at the end of the day, they look like how many people from the age bracket 18 to 25 voted, 25 to 40. By having that number of people down there, I'm like waving my hand sanitizer. I can't say by having that number of people go out and vote, you're saying I matter and I've got my eye on you, right? Even if you're not enthusiastic about all the people that you're voting for or the issues, or there might be a gap there and you're not necessarily sure that your vote's going to tap the ballot, the very fact that you're voting says I matter and I've got my eye on you. I thought that, and so I think that there's ways of getting around that. Marianne, what are your thoughts? What do you say to folks when they ask?
I wanted to share one more slide here, if I could please, to discuss. We need to vote our values. and I think this is a bit of a gap with our younger voters and training, bringing up the new leaders. We are concerned about public issues. So here we have a Gallup poll. This was last summer, 2019. They polled over 1,000 people to find out what do you see as extremely important issues for this election today. And here are the issues, the values that are represented by these issues. So I think as a trainer, I am a retired trainer, I can see all kinds of ways to develop engagement around this topic of, well, what are my values and how can I use my vote to reflect my values?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Thanks, Kara, for stopping by. I think I might see you at that same 6 o'clock event. Before we wrap up here, and I do think that that's an excellent point. One of the things that you actually see is, you know, I noticed in the last primary election, there wasn't a Republican primary so much because that was outcome that we already knew. But in the Democratic primary, you had a lot of the candidates bring up issues like transgendered rights and decriminalization of drugs and issues with regards to racial justice, economic inequality, and healthcare that very much are concerns of younger folks. And for those of us who have been voting in elections for the past 20 years, we're noticed like, we haven't heard these issues discussed as much. We heard a lot of Social Security in the past, and we've heard a lot about Medicare in the past. We've heard a lot about some of these broader issues, but it seems now that some of the issues the younger people are bringing up are getting some national attention. And so the way to take that forward seems to be to vote. And we've only got 5 minutes left. And so I want to ask all of you, what should anyone who's going to be watching the recording of this video, or anyone who's actually here now, what steps should they be doing? Are there opportunities for them to volunteer, either as poll workers or getting people out to the polls? What should they be doing with their time over the next 3.5 weeks?
Well, I don't mind to start. This is Nicole. And so, yes, there are opportunities to serve as a poll worker on Election Day. We are fortunate in Monroe County to have had better than expected response to our request for poll workers. So we actually have a backup list. But if you are interested, please do reach out. You can email me. You can call our office. We will pair you with a recruiter. We do not have to know your party. We're not trying to get in your business, but we do have to know your party because we have bipartisan teams that are a second set of eyes for the other person and to just make sure that everything is above board. It is a paid opportunity depending on what position you have. So if you want a new pair of shoes or looking at an outfit, I do pay. And then if for some reason you're not able to be selected, I know there are candidates out there that are needing and wanting help. There's also nonpartisan opportunities to get the word out to vote early. And I guess that my message to people, and I actually took this from the Postal Service with respect to mail ballots, whatever your action you're going to take it now. Don't wait. I have no idea what is going to happen. I don't need an unusual election, but it kind of wakes me up in the middle of the night that they could tell me to shut down counting if I'm not done. So whatever you're going to do, please do it now, do it early, so that at 6:01 I can get to work and I will just spin and spin and spin and work until we get all those votes counted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clerk Browne. Marianne, what is there? Are League of Women Voters, do you want any help over the next few weeks?
You may go to the League of Women Voters Bloomington Monroe County website, where we have an array of information that would be helpful both to you and to people you may know. We have a voter quick start, which is a one-page concise guide to registering and voting in both English and Spanish. But I would underline what Kai said, and that is, and you, Mark, have also said, which is having a plan to vote. This is something I hadn't thought about until recently, but yes, defining a day, date, and time, knowing I've got my ID ready if I'm going to go in person, having the plan and putting it in place, and then encouraging others to join you, make it a little bit social, have fun with it.
Yeah. All right, Kai, what about some, what about at IU? Are there opportunities to get involved in the process over the next few weeks?
Yes, there are so many. We're having like early voting days, of course, and then I know PACE is in the process of planning get out the vote incentives, whether that be like busing people to the polls or something of the sort. We're working on those right now. But one thing I think that everyone should be doing is encouraging those in your own circle to vote, go vote, because people can read it on, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or wherever that it's important to go vote. But that's different than actually hearing it from someone that you talk to on a daily basis and respect, saying, hey, this is why I'm voting this year, and this is why I think we should go vote together. So you should go vote whenever you can, or get your absentee ballot, or however they want to vote. Because this year, and as always, the issues are personal. It's not just some abstract concept that people can relate to based off of, an Instagram story, as I say, someone who posts Instagram stories about voting. But I also annoy my friends on a daily basis. Like, have they made their voting plan yet? Like, what is their plan? Do they have their ballot? Are they going to go vote, this weekend or whatever, whenever they go home? So I think putting as much, polite social pressure and explaining why voting is important. And something that I'm doing is I'm offering my car to, not like driving it, but like I'll drive some of my freshmen on my floor to go to Election Central if they don't have another way to get there. So as many small things as possible to get people to the polls, I think will make a big difference.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I think that this is great. So anyone who's watching this, make sure to make your plan, go vote, and you know where to volunteer if you need to be able to do it. And so keep in touch. Let us know if you got any questions. But thanks again to all of our panelists. Thanks again to United Way and everyone for a special doubleheader edition of the United Way Wake Up Speaker Series. This has been a great time. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thank you all.